Hello and welcome. That's a favorite line from one of my favorite professors. Anyways, today I'm doing my presentation on botulism. I hope you guys find it interesting. I thought it was really interesting. Epidemiology of botulism. In the United States, there's about 200 cases reported annually. Mostly it's infant botulism, which is linked to honey consumption. Foodborne botulism, often associated with home canned or preserved foods. Wound botulism, which you'll find happens a lot with people who use black tar heroin intravenously, which I'll go over, and wounds that are exposed to the soil. Okay, what is botulism? Botulism is a rare, potentially deadly illness caused by a neurotoxin produced by the Clostridium botulinum uh, bacteria. Uh, Botulinum toxin is extremely potent and attacks the nervous system, causing weakness and paralysis. And eventually it kills you because it paralyzes you so bad that you die. Clostridium is a genus of anaerobic gram-positive bacteria. Gram-positive organisms have a thicker peptidoglycan cell wall compared to gram-negative. Um, it's important because they stain differently, and then pink and purple, which you probably learned in micro, and the susceptibility to certain antibiotics. This species of Clostridium, it is going to produce this neurotoxin when there's low oxygen. So in low oxygen conditions, it'll start to produce this toxin and cause paralysis. Next, we have the history of botulism. Little long. Early 1820s. So this guy, German physician Justin Kerner, he investigated why there was a sudden breakout of people who were being paralyzed from eating sausages. He found out that eating sausages was a common denominator amongst everyone. Justin Kerner paved the way for crucial research into botulism and its toxin, ultimately leading to the identification of the culprit, which is Clostridium botulinum. Then here we have Emile Pierre Ermergem, I think is how you'd pronounce that. He isolated the characterized botulinum toxin from a contaminated ham, uncovering the cause of botulism. This breakthrough paved the way for understanding the toxin's properties and dangers. Next, we got this guy, 1950s, so we're getting a little bit closer. Dr. Edward J. Shantz. Colleagues, along with other researchers, successfully purify botulism type A, marking a crucial step in the potential applications. So guess what's coming up next? Or it's coming, I should say. Dr. Vernon Brooks discovers the muscle relaxing effects of botulinum toxin in small doses, opening the door for its therapeutic potential. And you can see here just by looking at this guy's picture. Alistair, so he used it to treat cross-eyed people. Now, Dr. Alistair is married to, he is married to this lady here, Dr. Jean Carruthers. So Dr. Alistair Carruthers and Dr. Jean Carruthers. So the Dr. Alistair, he fixes somebody's cross-eyed with it by basically it relaxes one of the muscles that makes the eyes cross-eyed. And she, of course, notices, hey, people who are using it for strabismus, which is cross-eyedness, they have less wrinkles here. So she's like, what goes on? Well, so then comes along Dr. Alan B. Scott and through extensive research expands the use of Botox beyond initial trials. He also starts using it for other spasms on the face, like involuntary eyelid twitching, I think facial spasms, neck spasms. So he ends up using it for a lot more things, and basically they find like different ways that they can use this botulinum toxin. Present day, well, Botox, basically. Botox takes major steps towards the world of aesthetic by receiving FDA approval and for treatments of crow's feet. So I have some pictures here of how it just relaxes the muscles in your face. Um, this is followed by a 2002 approval for glabellar frown lines, which are these. I have some. And officially marking its entry into the realm of cosmetic procedures. This opened the door for a wide range of new applications, propelling Botox to become a popular choice of cosmetic enhancements. However, it's important to remember that it's a medical application, and applications remain and continue to remain a central focus of research. And then here I put this little disclaimer, but basically with the Botox, it's very little what they give you to relax it, and you can actually get botulism from getting too much Botox, is what I found out. So let's move on here then to what causes botulism in humans. So we kind of went over that a little bit in epidemiology, but botulism is what you call an effect of a neurotoxin that Clostridium botulinum causes in the human. Now, when it's foodborne botulism, you're going to get it from eating food. And when it's wound botulism, you get it because spores of botulism or botulinum enter the wound, creating botulism. And infant botulism in the United States, it's caused by the spores in the intestines. So when you give a baby honey, it has spores in it, and their stomach is so brand new that they don't have the right flora to process it, and then it just becomes overrun by these spores, which is how they get botulism. Um, okay, and then next, botulism strains. There are 7 types of botulisms. Strain A, B, E, and F cause human botulism. C and E cause avian bird botulism. Strains C and D are responsible for botulism in animals like cattle, horses, chickens, and some fish. Type G, we don't have any recorded outbreaks of that. And then here's just like more of a breakdown that these strains here are with botulism in humans. And then here we see where you can find it mostly, and the primary causes and frequency. Okay. So here we get into the nitty-gritty of foodborne botulism. This occurs when the toxin is ingested through contaminated food. Improperly canned, preserved, or fermented foods can create conditions for the bacteria to thrive and produce toxins. So remember, when there's no oxygen, they're producing this toxin. And then common sources of foodborne botulism are homemade foods that have been improperly canned or preserved or fermented. So a lot of this is coming from like your neighbor made you a can of jelly apricots, and yeah, she didn't do it right, then you're risking it. Signs of potential contamination in canned foods include bulging lids, leaking contaminers, and abnormal appearances like damages or cracks. Now, you can also find this with food in the store. That is why they've always said don't buy dented cans. Also bulging, and then also like if you just open the can and it's black or it doesn't look good or it looks wrong, don't eat it. If it's expired, sometimes the shelf life lasts a long time, but again, you're risking it as also. So bulging lids, a bulge on the lid of a sealed can is a strong indicator that there's a buildup and Clostridium botulinum is probably in there. Leaking containers, of course, you're probably not going to eat that if common sense was actually common. And then abnormal appearances, cracked, dented, otherwise abnormally shaped. Google some pictures of it and more pictures, but I do have a picture here. If you suspect the container might be contaminated with botulism, you should dispose of it safely and accordingly. This typically involves placing the container in a sealed bag, wrapping it in another bag, and disposing it in a non-recycled trash. They say non-recycle because people still go through that trash. Then here we have wound botulism. Now, um, people who inject illicit drugs like black tar heroin have a greater chance of getting a wound botulism. The combination of black tar heroin's its potential contamination and the practice of skin popping creates a heightened risk of developing wound botulism among the users. People who have had traumatic injuries, such as motorcycle crashes or surgery, can get wound botulism if the wounds are not properly cleaned. Um, Wound botulism occurs when spores of the bacterium Clostridium botulinum infect the wound under certain conditions like lack of oxygen. They germinate and produce botulinum toxin. So I put a few pictures on here. I think my head's in the way of this one, but pretty much here, these are injection sites of black tar heroin. I never saw a picture of it, so I put a picture of it in here. Um, and essentially, like, I guess you just burn it on the spoon and suck it up in a needle and inject it, and you put it like right in the top layer of the dermis, and it creates a bubble, which is what they call skin popping. And the reason why it's more common with this black tar heroin than like regular heroin, I guess, is because black tar heroin is black because it has a lot of impurities in it. Um, so when that happens, you see these hands right here. Um, they look like they've been eaten by bacteria. Well, that's the botulism. And then this one right here, it's like a perfect circle because there's already been debridement that has happened, which means they're taking out like the necrotizing tissue already. So they're cleaning it up essentially. Um, Here we have infant botulism. So infant botulism is a type of botulism that occurs when an infant ingests spores of bacterium Clostridium botulinum. These spores, which can be found in the soil and certain foods like honey, colonize the baby's intestines and produce botulinum toxin. The toxin then blocks nerve signals, causing muscle weakness and other symptoms. Infants, especially under 1 years old, are vulnerable because digestive systems are not yet developed. I think I'm kind of repeating this, but they're not yet developed, and so it can effectively remove the Clostridium botulism or botulinum. And pretty much this is what ends up happening. So these pictures right here is like a baby who is just pretty much like he's limp or she's limp, and they're paralyzed. There's paralysis. They can't move their head, and I know sometimes babies can't pick up their head yet, but at a certain age they're supposed to be able to. So this baby right here and other pictures that I've seen, they're they have no muscle movement to hold themselves up. There's another one in here somewhere too. Okay, so symptoms of botulism, I highlighted it a few of them here because the ones in yellow are things that are going to be common in all three. So you're going to find these in all three. And then the first sign that they're going to look for, the doctors will look for, or that you can look for if you suspect, is facial weakness on both sides of the face. So you see that's in purple here and it's highlighted across the board. So definitely that's basically like droopiness. And then trouble swallowing or speaking, I mean, obviously, a baby's not going to speak, but may have trouble swallowing and blurred vision. You're not going to know if a baby has blurred vision or not. But droopy eyelids, and you'll see there's a picture, but pretty much you just can't open your eyes. Trouble breathing, that will be in all three, and then paralysis in all three. In foodborne botulism, you'll also have dry mouth, and there can be some nausea, vomiting, and stomach cramps. Wound botulism, you're going to get all the main symptoms. Infant botulism, some signs because they can't talk to you. Constipation is going to be one of the first symptoms. Floppy movement due to muscle weakness, so that's like, and they just fall. Trouble controlling their head, and when they're already supposed to control their head. Weak cry because your vocal cords also get affected by it. Irritability, drooling, tiredness, and trouble sucking or suckling. So that also goes with the trouble swallowing. So this is the most interesting part for me. Now, we just learned about the neuromuscular junction. So I had heard of botulism before, like in a YouTube channel that I watch. And so the whole time that we were learning about it, I was like, oh, this is where you connect it, right? So let me go through this. Science behind the symptoms. Clostridium bacterium, specifically Clostridium botulinum, produces neurotoxins under anaerobic low oxygen conditions. These toxins, known as botulinum toxins, are the cause of botulism and severe form of paralysis. Botulism affects the eyesight because botulinum toxin interferes with the nerves that control the muscle movement. Symptoms of botulism typically appear within 12 to 36 hours after ingesting contaminated food, but can occur as early as a few hours or as late as 10 days. Nausea, vomiting, weakness, vertigo can be a symptom that will generally show first. Because Clostridium botulism is ingested, it starts in the digestive tract. Facial weakness is another one of the first ones too. Once botulism enters the body, it starts to make a neurotoxin. The neurotoxin produced by botulism is called botulism toxin or botulinum toxin. Botulinum toxin will keep the vesicle in the axon terminal from exocytosis and result in ACH, which is acetylcholine, cannot bind to the receptors of the sarcolemma. So, and then I'll explain it here, and then I also have a video. Botulinum toxin does this by damaging the proteins on the vesicles called synaptobrevin. This protein connects to the syntax in SNAP25, which is another protein, and then on the membrane of the axon terminal. This affects membrane fusion. So as a result, contraction of the muscle cannot be completed and acute paralysis sets in. When muscles are affected with it will affect the body function, and these muscles will start to cease, such as eyes, arms, legs, vocal cords, diaphragm. And then in the end, without medical intervention, this will lead to death by asphyxiation. Your lungs will no longer be able to contract. So you're gonna probably, you'll exhale, and then that's it. Like you can't inhale anymore. I think is how that works. Um, So this right here, basically what ends up happening in this section right here is you're in the axon terminal, you get your axon potential that comes in, and then everything's supposed to go the way it's supposed to go, but then you have these botulinum toxin that are going to block these vesicles from exocytosis of acetylcholine, and so once they're blocked, they cannot do exocytosis from the axon terminal. Therefore, acetylcholine cannot get to their receptors, and you can't you just won't have any muscle contraction there. So it pretty much just blocks it. Now, next I have a video, and I know it's 3 minutes, um, and it's really explains it really well.
In the normal nerve ending at the neuromuscular junction, there exists numerous small preformed vesicles containing the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. As an action potential travels down the nerve and reaches the nerve ending, it causes the acetylcholine-containing vesicles to dock to the terminal of the junction. The membrane of the acetylcholine-containing vesicle fuses and releases acetylcholine into the synaptic cleft. Acetylcholine is then bound to the postsynaptic muscle membrane, and muscular contraction is initiated. Allowing the preformed acetylcholine vesicles to dock and fuse to the membrane is a structure termed the synaptic fusion complex, which is made up of a group of proteins known as the snare proteins. Two sets of snare proteins exist and are required for fusion and neurotransmitter release. One on the acetylcholine-containing vesicle, termed synaptobrevin, also known as vesicle-associated membrane protein, or VAMP, and another group on the neuronal membrane called soluble N-ethylmalamide sensitive fusion attachment protein 25, or SNAP25, and syntaxin. The snare complex formation is an energy-releasing process that may supply the required free energy for membrane fusion. This snare core complex is the location for the mechanism of action for botulinum toxins. If one or more of the snare proteins are damaged, the acetylcholine-containing vesicles cannot dock and fuse, and acetylcholine cannot be released. Botulinum toxin type B consists of both a heavy chain that binds to synaptotagmin and a light chain which is internalized into the vesicle through endocytosis. Within the vesicle, within the nerve ending, the light chain, through a yet-to-be-determined process, translocates the vesicular membrane and through an enzymatic process cleaves synaptobrevin in the acetylcholine-containing vesicles in the nerve ending. This process results in an inability for the acetylcholine-containing vesicles to fuse, and as a result, chemodenervation occurs. Once synaptic transmission is inhibited, the target structure no longer functions. In the case of skeletal muscle, it means muscle contraction ceases. In response to this chemodenervation, which results in inhibition of acetylcholine release, new, smaller, unmyelinated nerve endings, termed peripheral sprouts, are formed which are able to restore normal neurotransmission. Thereafter, the light chains are degraded within the nerve terminal that was originally affected by botulinum toxin. Normal neurotransmission can be reestablished and the nerve endings that sprouted retract. Peripheral sprouting usually begins to occur in 28 days, and normal nerve transmission is normally reestablished in approximately 3 months following botulinum toxin injection. In the normal nerve ending at the neuromuscular junction, there exists numerous small preformed vesicles containing the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. As an action potential travels down the nerve and reaches the nerve ending, it causes the acetylcholine-containing vesicles to dock to the terminal of the junction. The membrane of the acetylcholine-containing vesicle fuses and releases acetylcholine into the synaptic cleft. Acetylcholine is then bound to the postsynaptic muscle membrane, and muscular contraction is initiated. Allowing the preformed acetylcholine vesicles to dock and fuse to the membrane is a structure termed the synaptic fusion complex, which is made up of a group of proteins known as the snare proteins. Two sets of snare proteins exist and are required for fusion and neurotransmitter release. One on the acetylcholine-containing vesicle, termed synaptobrevin, also known as vesicle-associated membrane protein, or VAMP, and another group on the neuronal membrane, called soluble N-ethylmalamide sensitive fusion attachment protein 25, or SNAP25, and syntaxin. The snare complex formation is an energy-releasing process that may supply the required free energy for membrane fusion. This snare core complex is the location for the mechanism of action for botulinum toxins. If one or more of the snare proteins are damaged, the acetylcholine-containing vesicles cannot dock and fuse, and acetylcholine cannot be released. Botulinum toxin type B consists of both a heavy chain that binds to synaptotagmin and a light chain which is internalized into the vesicle through endocytosis. Within the vesicle, within the nerve ending, the light chain, through a yet-to-be-determined process, translocates the vesicular membrane and through an enzymatic process cleaves synaptobrevin in the acetylcholine-containing vesicles in the nerve ending. This process results in an inability for the acetylcholine-containing vesicles to fuse, and as a result, chemodenervation occurs. Once synaptic transmission is inhibited, the target structure no longer functions. In the case of skeletal muscle, it means muscle contraction ceases. In response to this chemodenervation, which results in inhibition of acetylcholine release, new, smaller, unmyelinated nerve endings, termed peripheral sprouts, are formed which are able to restore normal neurotransmission. Thereafter, the light chains are degraded within the nerve terminal that was originally affected by botulinum toxin. Normal neurotransmission can be reestablished and the nerve endings that sprouted retract. Peripheral sprouting usually begins to occur in 28 days, and normal nerve transmission is normally reestablished in approximately 3 months following botulinum toxin injection.
So that was like an interesting video on how it works. It explained everything. So diagnosis, so this is how they're going to diagnose you once you come into the doctor. So first they're just going to do like a quick checkup on you, like a physical or something like that. So a quick physical, and they're going to look for signs of muscle weakness, paralysis, weak vocal cords, potential foods that you may have eaten in the past few days. Um, Ask if you have any known exposure to Clostridium botulinum, and if it's a baby, they're going to say, well, have you fed the baby honey or corn syrup or anything like that in the last past couple days, or even hours, right? Now, then they will work on labs, but of course, labs take a while to come in, and they'll get blood, stool, and a toxicology lab. This they definitely have to get for the baby, and that's because the baby can't talk, right? So here you have a picture of a baby that again is very limp, and you see paralysis and muscle weakness. And this is a picture of what I was talking about when I was saying how the eyelids is one of the symptoms. Like you just can't open your eyes. So imagine not being able to open your eyes. And then there's one more too. So um, they do also an electric myography test, which what this is basically is they're going to test the action potential of the muscle and how it's going to react to the electrical impulse that's given. So the test measures the electrical activity of the muscles and nerves. In botulism, EMG can reveal characteristics, patterns of muscle weakness, such as small evoked action potential following nerve stimulation. And then here's a picture of just what symptoms you'd expect to see. Alrighty, treatment. Botulinum antitoxin. It contains antibodies to neutralize the botulinum neurotoxin, preventing it from causing further harm. They have two. One is for babies, one is for adults. Botulinum antitoxin does not reverse damage that is already done by the toxin, but it helps prevent the disease from progressing and can be most effective when given in early illness. So the video explained that it takes 28 days for those peripheral sprouts to show up, which I had no idea that even happened. That like was totally cool and blew my mind. It's going to create little sprouts to help with muscle movement because the neuron or the axon terminal is not working, and basically the body knows, and it's going to create like a workaround. And so it takes 28 days for those to happen. You'll see some movement, and then 30 days to 3 months for the axon to fix itself, because eventually it can fix itself. Now, this is if you don't die, if you don't get to the doctor in time and they don't diagnose you properly or with enough time, you will die of asphyxiation, which sucks. People have died of botulism because it's not so common anymore. There was a story on YouTube about a guy who ate nachos at the gas station. So this can of cheese was either improperly packaged by the cheese company or it was not stored properly by the gas station. Either way, I think 6 people got botulism in that specific case, and the guy did have to go on a respirator, so he wasn't able to breathe on his own anymore. And then my last one is just a couple of sites I got some information from, and I hope maybe you learned a thing or two. But yeah, thank you.